Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video today, I'm going to go through the 5 key elements of Pilates. So it's a video I've been asked to do quite a lot recently, especially by patients in the clinic. And I wanted to just go through the key elements of Pilates one by one, just to make sure that if you have any issues with them in the class, you will be able to follow this basic video to guide you through the key elements that you need to know to be able to do the classes efficiently. So the 5 key elements of Pilates are basically, first of all, the breathing. We go through lateral breathing, so you make sure it's the most efficient way of breathing to make sure to give your muscles enough oxygen and to get rid of all the byproducts from fatigue, and to obviously be able to go through the exercise a bit longer. Secondly, we go through centering, so the middle position of where your pelvis needs to be. And then we go through where your ribs needs to be placed, so we call it ribcage placement. The fourth one is your shoulder blade placement. And then the last one is combining all of them together to be able to do the exercises more efficiently. So we're going to start with the first one. You don't really need much equipment for this video, so you need a mat, or else you can do it on the carpet. It doesn't matter where really, as long as it's a nice soft surface and you're comfortable and it's not it's not uncomfortable on your body. And then you will need either a small soft pillow, this is the Pilates pillow, or else a folded towel. So if you don't have any of the pillow, it doesn't matter, you can use a folded towel. Whatever you have, it should be enough that it will keep your neck in a neutral position, so it's not bent too far forward or bent backwards because it's really low. It needs to be somewhere in the middle where your neck is in the least amount of tension possible. So you're going to get yourself lying onto the mat, and just if you have a bun underneath your head, just remove it and just make sure your head is on that towel with a nice space of your neck. And again, as I said, it's not bent too far up and it's not bent too far backwards, so we're really going to focus on the basics. So feet are flat, knees are bent, and you want to make sure that you're in the nice middle position, so your legs aren't one way and your body is the other. So you really want to make sure you're in the middle position. Toes are pointing forwards, knees in line with hips, with ribs and with the shoulders. And then you're just going to lay your hands by your side for a minute. So before you do anything, just take a minute to close your eyes and feel where your body is in space. So feel the pressure on your feet, feel the pressure on your heels, the pressure on your tailbone. Where's the pressure on your chest, your shoulders? Are your shoulders too high up, too drop down? Is the arch in your lower back too big? Just take a second to gather where your body is in space. And this is a very good exercise to start off with, to really just hound your mind and body connection. So then once you've done this, you want to start off with the first one. So the first one is your breathing. So why breathing is important? As I said before, breathing the proper way is to improve the amount of capacity that we use in the lungs. Most of the time we tend to either use half of the capacity in our lungs when we're doing exercise, so we really want to make it more efficient. And the more efficient we are, the more oxygen goes to our muscles, the more efficient they work, and the less fatigue byproducts we get, so we obviously fatigue less. So again, we're going to learn how to do lateral breathing, and lateral breathing also helps with the mobility of your rib cage. So we want to work on the side of your lungs to really improve that capacity of your lung. So we do that by putting your hands by your side, by that side where you have your ribs. So you just feel where your ribs are and just round your fingers around that rib cage. And then what you want to do is take a breath in through your nose, and you want to try and fill those hands with air. So you're going to take a breath into the nose, feel those lungs opening up and the rib cage opening up and expanding to the side, and then as you breathe out, it ever so slightly sinks down. And what you can do to get a little bit of facilitation through the movement is, as it goes down, you just press a little bit with those fingers and the hands, And then as you let go, it recoils, so it automatically gets that little bit of extra movement and mobility. So again, deep breath in through the nose, breathing out through the mouth. Again, breathing in through the nose, breathing out through the mouth. And it's a really good practice to learn how to breathe through the lateral side of our lungs. So a lot of us will be apical breathers, so chest breathers through the top, and we won't be using the bottom part of our lungs. So we really just want to focus on gaining as much as the lung capacity as possible. So again, we keep our hands around the lungs, take a breath in through the nose, and breath out. One more, breathing in and breathing out. So practicing that lateral breathing really works. Now, if you struggle to get that focus in the lateral breathing and you're really just still focusing onto here, what you could do is do a few movements where you're putting one hand on the chest and one hand on the side of one rib, and think of taking a breath in through the nose again. And really aim at taking a breath in through the sides rather than lifting the hands and taking a breath in through the top of your chest. So again, your focus is lateral breathing. You always want to then switch around so you have both sides working. But again, you're wanting to breathe in through that side of your waist. Now, having said that, you also want to practice a little bit of belly breathing. Now, belly breathing is important because it helps relax and contract your pelvic floor, which we will need to exercise during our key elements and our Pilates. So again, belly breathing is putting your hands right down where your belly button is into that pubic area. It's almost like where your triangle, which we will use later on as well, will be. So that little bit over there where your hips dip in through the pelvis, and then you've got your pubic bone on the front. So your hands goes there, and you want to take a breath in through the nose and aim for your breath to go towards your pubic bone into that hand and lifting that hand up. So take a breath in and take a breath out and let it drop. Again, breath in and breath out. Two more, breath in and breath out. Last one, breath in and breath out. And again, you can practice as well doing one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly, and changing the way where you're breathing. So again, if you want to do more lateral, you put one hand on the lateral side and then on the belly. If you want to practice going apical and tummy, you can. But for this key element, you really want to mostly focus on your lateral breathing. So even though you practice the different breaths, you want to really focus on the lateral breathing. So again, we just practice one more time lateral breathing. Hands around the rib cage. Take a breath in. Take a breath out. And we're looking at expanding out and then recoiling in. So that's element number one. Element number two, we're finding the center through your pelvis. So as I mentioned, you can do a diamond with your thumbs and your index finger. You put your thumbs over your belly button and your index finger over your pubic bone. And then you rest the palms of your hands on the front of your hip bones. So that forms a diamond shape. And then what you want to do is you're going to think of that lower back and you're going to press that lower back into the floor, and that points a diamond up. So that's your posterior pelvic tilt. And then as you breathe out, we're going to coil forwards, and that increases the arch of your back and points a diamond down. And we're going to practice that a few times. And as you're practicing, you really want to make sure you're just rocking your pelvis back and forwards. We really want to avoid doing this, and you really want to avoid lifting through the chest. So really and truly it should come mostly and purely from your pelvis. So you're pointing diamond down, arching your back, and then pressing down, lifting up. Again, pointing down, and then pressing down. And you do a few more where you go forwards and backwards. And if you have any pain, don't push into any sharp stabbing pain. You want to go within the range of your pain tolerance. Very good. 2 more. Last one. And then you stop somewhere in the middle where your pelvis is, with the diamond shape being flat. Most of the pressure is on the tailbone and your back is nor too large nor too flat. And if you have to slide your hand, there is enough of a gap there. Okay, so that should be the middle. That's your centering through your pelvis. Now, let's do the centering of your rib cage placement. So before, we have that position where your thumbs go backwards and fingers around the front of the rib cage. So what we're doing now is the same thing we did here, where we go forwards and backwards, but this time imagine your thumbs, you're going to lift your chest up towards the ceiling, and this flares your ribs up. And when you flare your rib up, what happens is it increases the arch of your lower back and it pulls onto the ribs and your abdominal wall on the front. So then you want to make sure you can pull it down. So the pulling down is the more difficult exercise to do. A lot of people will be up here and will find it really hard to just soften those ribs down. But once we try and get those ribs down without lifting the shoulders, so you want to really keep your shoulders relaxed. This is all about the ribs. When you soften the ribs down, you get activation through the top of your abdominal muscles and you get that softening through the ribs and you don't get that big arch to the lower back. So the rib cage positioning, same as the bottom one, we are doing a lift and we are doing a lower. 2 more, we go lift and the lower, really focusing on those ribs lifting up and ribs lowering down, really taking notice of those shoulders. Even I have to take notice of that sometimes. We lift up to the ribs and soften down again. Last one and drop. So that's your rib cage. And then what you want to do, same thing as we did finding the center position through there, we find the rib cage placement where your ribs aren't too high up, aren't too down. There's somewhere soft in the middle. And if you had to feel for the border of your rib cage and extend thumb, extending the little fingers to the front of your hips, they should be in line, and you shouldn't have your rib cage too high up, much higher than the hips. So that is your rib cage placement. So the next element we're going to do is your shoulder blade placement. So the shoulder blade is a piece of bone that articulates the complex of the shoulder with the rib cage, and we really want to make sure that that shoulder blade glides nicely up and down around our ribs, and the shoulders don't sit too high up or sit too far back, because if they sit too high up, then it's really closing the front of the shoulders and not allowing the right movement and just pinching on the structures on the front shoulders, that we really don't want that. And if it sits too far back, we're really squeezing those shoulder blades back. So we just want to make it in the middle. So the same as we found the centering in your pelvis and the positioning of the rib cage, we're going to do your shoulder blades. So imagine hands floating up towards the ceiling, and imagine you're holding an imaginary helium balloon. So you can imagine anything, or someone pulling you through the fingertips up towards the ceiling. You're going to lift those shoulder blades up away from the mat, and then you're going to drop them back down. So you really want to feel that gliding of the shoulder blades lifting up and then gliding back down. So they're going up and gliding around the shoulder blades, coming more forwards and then going more backwards as they drop down. Keeping the shoulders away from your ear. So you really want to keep that nice open space through the ear and the shoulder. Again, lifting up and dropping down. Lifting up and dropping down. 2 more, lifting up and dropping down. And then last one, you want to stop somewhere in the middle where the shoulder blade is gently just in that nice comfortable position, not to lift it up, not to lower it down. It's in the middle and away from the shoulder, and then you drop it down. And that's a position where your shoulder blades should be. From the front, as soon as you drop your hand, you want to not allow those shoulders to lift. Just really think of that position of your shoulder blades where it should be. and you want to soften from the front but not squeeze too backwards, just a little bit in the middle. So we've done the centering through your pelvis, centering through the ribcage, so your ribcage placement, your centering through your pelvis, your shoulder blade placement. We've done your breathing, and now we're going to join everything together. So that's your last key element, is joining all of those things together and just trying to keep neutral spine. So neutral spine is ideally the position where most of your deep core muscles will work most efficiently, but it is where everything in Pilates starts off from. So finding that neutral spine, we start. So toes pointing forwards, knees in line with hips, and then we're going to roll pelvis forwards and backwards, and then stop in the middle where your back is not completely flat but not completely arched. We reach further up into that rib cage. We make sure that the ribs are in line with your hips, and we want to make sure that the ribs isn't lifted too high up. It's nicely and soft down, getting that abdominal muscle already starting to engage. And then we're thinking of the shoulders, making sure that they're placed in the midpoint position through the shoulder blade, and then hands by your side. And also then thinking of your head, neck, and your spine being in the middle, and your toes pointed forward, and you're thinking of two parallel lines running in symmetry with your spine, head, and neck. And that there is your neutral spine position. So those have been your 5 key elements that we went through for your Pilates practice. So your 5 key elements were your breathing, lateral breathing. We have done your centering, which is your second one through your pelvis. Then we've done your rib cage placement, done your shoulder blade placement, and then combining all together. I would recommend doing these exercises at least once a day, especially in the beginning of your practice, until you get that mind-body connection that is really important in the beginning of your practice. And repeat at least 6 to 8 repetitions of each of the movements, whether that's the breathing or the actual movement going as you're doing through the key elements. Do these less once you've been doing the practice for a very long time, and come back to the video as often as you can to just keep refreshing your mind, even if you've been doing Pilates for years, because there's always something that you will pick up that you would have lost along the way, and keeping up with your practice is really, really important. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have, please don't forget to like, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and leave a comment below if you have enjoyed it to the point where you would like some more of this. Thank you very much, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.